Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. Excuse me. About to be joined by Ken Weeb from the Winnipeg Free Press. Together, we are Kenny and Renny. This is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after. Oh boy, oh boy. I gotta say it. Yeah, we talked about it before the break. The kind of strategy that the Winnipeg Jets have taken to try and fight their way back into the playoffs this season. I gotta say it's where entertainment goes to die. This is Minnesota Wild hockey from back in the day, Jacques Lemaire hockey, maybe New Jersey Devils hockey. I don't know, but let's hop into the Toyota and head out for the Jim Pattison Toyota on region opening drive and kind of discuss this whole thing. And I get it. I get it. The Jets can't score. I think they're 25th in the league in scoring. And we talked about last year, and I think it's important to talk about last year because what made the Jets great last year is they were this great defensive team. And if you remember, it all started with a philosophy with when Rick Bowness came in. And if you remember, you'll remember him saying this in the media all the time. They head out and they're trying to win games 2-1. He'd say all the time, we're trying to win games 2-1. Now, and he'd always follow that up by saying, now, it's not like we don't want to win 3-1, 4-1, 5-1 or whatever. But the mindset has to be, we're going to get into this game and we're going to grind it out to a 2-1 victory. And if you remember, for the longest time, remember there was that crazy streak of how many games it was that the Jets had not given up more than 2 goals in a game, right? They achieved that. It was like they were a 2-1 team, except they weren't. They were a 3-4, 5-1 team. And that's what Rick Bowness would say. We want to win like that, but we got to be in the mindset where we're ready to win a 2-1 game. The difference between that team and this team was that team had the offensive capabilities and the speed to capitalize on the mistakes other teams were making when they tried to open up to get back into games. And then the Jets could make them pay. And now it's, goes from 1-0 to 2-0 to 3-0 or whatever. Then if you remember, the Jets were a very, very dominant third period team. They used to be. And that's where a lot of their offense would come from pressing teams, applying the pressure and having them crack, having them take chances. And when they did take those chances, it would end up in that team's net because the Jets would capitalize on it. The Jets tried to be that team at the beginning of the year. I don't know how long it took them to get to the point where they kind of figured out we do not have the personnel to be that team like last year. But so many of you would say in the podcast, in the comments, I'd hear it and, texts being sent to me, conversations I had out in public about people, well, why don't the coaches, if they don't have the right team, just switch it up? And you've heard my explanation. It's not so easy to do. A lot of times, great coaches where people say, I think they lost the room. It's just that the team changes and the personnel over time that is lost and tried to be replaced isn't what it was. And now it doesn't fit the system that coach coaches anymore, right? Well, this is an example of Scott Arniel doing what so many people called for, tweaking for the roster that he has. And what that tweak has become is that the Winnipeg Jets are a team that are just going to play really, really boring hockey for the most part. If you think about that game against, boring unless they're getting piled on in the other direction. I'm thinking of the Montreal Canadiens game right before they went to the break. But they come out of the break and they play Vancouver, and that's a 2-2 game. It's a slow, low event, grinded out game. The Jets end up pulling that out against the last place team in the league. They pull that one off. They were pulling off one of the old 2-1 games. It's 2-1 them over Anaheim going into the third period. Then they score. Then things kind of get out of hand on them. Tonight they got the lead. They're up 1-0. But what you're seeing is the style of hockey that the Jets are playing, and Scott Arniel talked about it afterwards. He's not necessarily overly upset about the team's inability to score going forward, although he'll touch on that. But it's the mistakes that were made that allowed them to get back into that game. He's upset that their teams are getting back into that game because he's expecting a 1-0 victory in that game. And that's what the Winnipeg Jets are trying for. And I mean, hey, you may be cheering for points in the standings. It's not entertaining hockey. Let's just be honest with ourselves. It's not entertaining to watch a team try and grind out 1-0 victories from now until the end of the season, but it's all they have. And I have to say, I think Scott Arniel's done a pretty good job with it. If you talk about the halfway point of the season, where I've kind of held that marker and said to you, the Jets halfway point of the season need to go 7 out of 10 in every 4-game block. Basically from then until the end of the season to make the playoffs. They haven't been, they were at that pace after the first 10 games. They've fallen off after the next 10 games. They're not going to reach that mark here. So now that number's gone up. It's more like 7.5. They need 7 wins and an overtime win out of the remaining 10 games going forward, basically. And actually, now that I do the math in my head, not even that's enough. It's a little closer to 800. It's closer to 8 games out of 10 that they need to win going forward to pull this off. But this is exactly what people were calling for. So I know that there was a lot of people who were, there were some people who were calling for Scott Arniel's head and some people who were really upset about, what was happening. And it's in their mind, it's really simple. Oh, your team's not winning. Entirely change things around and have an entirely new system and then just go out and win like that. The Winnipeg Jets don't have the ability to score the way that they did in the past. So what they have done is they've prioritized a low-event, boring style of hockey that you saw on this night tonight. And the issue with that is you're playing young, fast teams. You don't have the fastest team. You're still there. Like, my point of this is Scott Arniel has the Jets playing a really, really good defensive brand of hockey. Do they hold the lead all the time? Well, they didn't in their last game, and they didn't again here tonight. And it's difficult to do that when you're playing a team that's pretty much faster than you, right? That's what they ran into in Anaheim. That's what they ran into in San Jose. We've talked at length all year about the issues with the Jets' speed, and that's where it catches up to you. But for the most part, Scott Arniel, I think, has done a really, really good job, because I'm taking a look around the league, and every time I need to leave the Jets and go to a Montreal Canadiens game or an Ottawa Senators game or something like that, the games look entirely different. And they look different because there's 2 teams going out there trying to win a hockey game. But the Jets, every game they're involved with is they're trying to grind it down to absolutely nothing and frustrate the other team and hope they make mistakes or hope they get an early goal, which the Jets did in the last game and in the game here tonight, and then hold on for dear life and try and hold that lead. It got them points in the last 2 games here. It got them 4 out of 6 points on this road trip, that's good. A 66 point percentage or 0.666 point percentage. That's really good. It's not good enough to get into the playoffs. They need to do better than that, but it's still pretty good on a California road trip, which they kind of got skunked on last time. But man, oh man, grinded out hockey. This is what we're going to see for the rest of the season. There's not a point at which the Winnipeg Jets offense opens up and they start going on a tear down the stretch and winning games 5-4, repeatedly. And that's what it's going to look like. This is it, ladies and gentlemen. Low event hockey, grind it down, shut things down. This is what we are going to see from the Winnipeg Jets from now until the end of the season. I would hope when it gets to the point that the playoffs just aren't there, that things would maybe just open up and we can watch some hockey at some point down the stretch here. Right now, it is bracing. It is a battle of attrition. It is trying to put every team it is trying to get the other team so frustrated watching paint dry throughout a game that they do something silly and maybe the Jets can take and put it in the back of the net. It's not my favorite winning strategy for the Winnipeg Jets, but to be honest, it probably is it gives the Jets the best possible chance to pull off the miracle of making the playoffs, which you already know Renny is not believing in that miracle. Anyways, that's my take on the whole thing for the Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent opening drive. And I will say this, this goes up to March 2nd. So this February, even though it's not February anymore, it's time to Toyota, Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent. You can finance the new 2026 Prius plug-in hybrid from 2.49% plus receive up to $2,500 in electric vehicle rebates, but you gotta hurry. You really gotta hurry. You got until tomorrow because the offer ends March 2nd. So visit Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent for a test drive today and make sure that you tell him Kenny and Renny sent you. All right, time to bring in the man who is on the scene for this I'll say it, for this snooze fest. The man with the best music in the business. Here comes Kenny, folks. Kenny, fans like Chris, Jets fan 1, they know that the way to Rennie's heart is through flattery. And here he says, how come you were right about this team so early in the season? Sean, Chris, I wish, hey, I explain a lot of things on the show. I wish I could explain that. All I know is, did you ever see the movie Old School? And Will Ferrell, he does that thing where he's on the debate stage and he kind of like blacks out and says something and then stops talking. He's like, where am I? That happens to me almost every show. At the end of the show, I just stop talking and I wake up and I'm like, hey, what just happened? And he's like, we just did the show. That's how it happens every time. So I don't have an explanation for you, Chris. I maybe I'm speaking in tongues. Maybe there's another force speaking through me. I'm not a spiritual person, but I'm not going to rule it out. But regardless, for me, Ken, that is good enough for the Flame and Comfort hot take of the show. That is your hot take, brought to you by Flame and Comfort, Manitoba's premier supplier of fireplaces, wood stoves, inserts, and everything hearth related. After 50 years heating up your world, Flame and Comfort has moved to 1465 St. James Street. You will find when you get there, it is one of the most impressive showrooms you will see in Western Canada. You don't need your hot takes to keep that warm feeling inside, folks. You can visit Flame and Comfort, and they will take care of it for you. Ken, now that I'm done complimenting myself, let me get back to complimenting you and how good you are looking in your Vittorio Rossi threads there. I wore them on whole, en masse at the Olympics. I've had a little bit of a break after 23 straight days in a suit. I don't think I've gotten out of the pajamas since. Hopefully, when the Jets get back here, I don't come stumbling into the building in pajamas. But if I do, I know I don't need to worry about it because everyone will be looking at the sharp-dressed man who will be back in town because Kenny went down to Vittorio Rossi, walked in, and they did him up, right? You need to do the same. Loudly proclaim Kenny and Renny sent you. Ask for Frankie and the boys, and they'll have you looking so good that Renny could be walking beside you in pajamas and no one would even notice. Ken, what'd you take away from that game?
Well, first of all, thanks for the boost there. I was thinking I might have to ask them to play Seek and Destroy for the entrance music here to get ready for the show. But we've got our own entrance music, so that's pretty good. I will say this, and I'm going to get it out of the way early. No, it was definitely low event hockey, but Sean, we've talked about this the last 4 or 5 times that you or I have come into this building. The last few years have been pretty lean for the Sharks. And there have been some nights where there's maybe 10 or 10,000 people in the building. They had a sellout today, back-to-back afternoon games, every single scoring chance. Place is rocking again. I've said this before. I was in the building in 2016 when they beat the St. Louis Blues to advance to the Stanley Cup final for the first time in franchise history. It's one of the loudest buildings I've ever been in. So I'm happy to see the Sharks faithful have a more exciting team to follow, and that fact that they're back into it. So kudos to them. In terms of the game, yeah, I mean, low event for sure. And as you mentioned, I mean, the Jets aren't, for lack of a better term, the snake charmers are not walking back in the building. This isn't a team that is generating enough scoring chances to be able to put up 4 or 5 a game. Today, obviously, there were chances in the third. Morgan Barron with a really excellent burst of speed on that shorthanded chance. He tries to stuff it on the far post, and Alex Nedeljkovic just makes a great save. But this is one of those games where the Jets get secondary scoring. They get a fourth-line goal, but they don't get anything else. They don't get anything on the power play. And, it's a rare night when the top guns were fairly quiet. So, they had the schedule advantage. And Sean, to your point about the game, super exciting. I think the Sharks were kind of trying to cater their game today to low event hockey also, based on the fact they had a bit of a track meet in here with the Edmonton Oilers on Saturday afternoon. So definitely they looked like a team that was not 100% sharp. Macklin Celebrini, again, a treat to watch him play. He made a couple of like unbelievable passes again, but the Jets kept him under wraps. I mean, he had one secondary assist, but this wasn't the Celebrini show. The puck wasn't on his stick every other shift, or like we've seen on various points. I mean, in the first game up here just in November, neither one of us were here, but Celebrini was here, he was there, he was everywhere, he was omnipresent, setting up the time, or setting up one and scoring the other. So, I mean, again, if I had told you going into the game, Sean, that the Jets would keep Celebrini to one secondary assist, you probably would have liked your chances if you were Scott O'Neill or any of the players. Yet, the start of I know you touched on it, I'm sure, before I got on after filing, but that was Scott O'Neill on the slow burn again today. Again, and if people just saw the quotes or didn't see the visual, Scott was trying to bite his tongue and he just couldn't. He was so angry with the way the team started the third period, giving up a breakaway to Philip Kurashev, giving up a 3-on-2, and then giving up a 2-on-1 that led to the tying goal. He was beside himself. I mean, you knew the push was coming from the Sharks. This is what they do. They flew the zone on several occasions, but the Jets were not alert, were aware enough of the situation to allow those plays to happen. And I think that was probably the most frustrating part. Sean, you've talked about this countless times. The skills competition has not been kind to the Jets this year. No. They've lost 10 of 11. We know this, that what used to be the superpower is now their kryptonite in some ways, Sean, as crazy as that sounds. But man, that was a pretty short answer when I asked him about the 3-on-3 compared to years past. And quite bluntly, Scott O'Neill said personnel. Personnel has a lot to do with it. I thought that was pretty telling. 2 references to personnel. First, to the veteran experience that was on the ice for some of those breakdowns. And then, again, I know where you're going. And I mean, they still have Scheifele and Connor, which was sort of the superpower in itself when they threw out Josh Morrissey with them. But Morrissey, I guess, obviously has been as available lately. But I mean, he was there for a good chunk of some of those losses also. And again, not pinning it on those guys, but they just haven't converted the way they have in the past. And Sean, you've broken it down on countless occasions. The Jets' ability to set those subtle screens and picks in overtime, those are nowhere to be found anymore. There aren't any.
There was a good one tonight. One tonight. Mark Scheifele took 2 guys and gave Connor a good chance. Yeah,
and that one went off the knob of the stick. So again, it's a coin flip a lot of the time. But Sean, we're talking about a team that's 9 points out in the Western Conference. They've had one out of they've had one win out of the last 11 games that went beyond regulation. And even if they win half of those, or it's somewhere in that neighborhood, we're having a totally different discussion as it pertains to the playoff chase. But guess what? It's not horseshoes here. It's not close. Close is not good enough. So they've got to find a way to try to figure things out quickly, or else the Jets are going to come to the realization over the course of this week that we've been talking about for a long time. I mean, if it's a double-digit deficit come Friday, it's pretty apparent that the Jets are going to have to be pretty proactive as it comes to being sellers.
Isn't it already?
Yeah, no.
I mean, is it?
Agree.
Hold on, just if you're looking for signs, like I thought it was in my mind, Ken. I thought if after that 5-1 loss to the Montreal Canadiens before the break, it wasn't evident that the Jets had to conduct themselves and move and get whatever they could to build towards the future. I don't know how you miss it, but even if you come back from this and you can look at the silver lining of this and you can say, hey, they took 4 of 6 points on this road trip. You could also look at this and say they pulled off a comeback victory against the last place team in the league. They blew a lead against a team that had come off of a track meet in that game against Anaheim, which I really thought Anaheim didn't decide to start playing until the third period of that game. But on top of that, you're playing yes, it's the San Jose Sharks. Yes, they're different than they were. They're still a below playoff team, right? This is a team that if the Jets beat them clean, they're 3 points behind them. They're not world beaters. They've got a world beater that leads them. but they're not world beaters. And they're coming off, like you said, a track meet game against the Edmonton Oilers. Like, this is one of those scheduled losses that we're talking about. And the inability of the Jets to walk away from this trip with 5 to 6 points out of this is all I need to see, right? Like, what can possibly happen in this coming week between now and the trade deadline that's going to click and be like, oh my God, don't sell anything. Everything's working at this stage. Isn't it far too late already?
I'm just saying it's crystallizing, I think, in front of us, right? I mean, if they go 6 for 6, maybe you can talk yourself into being close enough to make a run. I just don't think that if the deficit, and again, we've talked about this before, like you said, Sean, 11 points going into the break. I mean, that was going to be almost impossible to overcome. So I think, like, to your point, I think it's just become more readily apparent. And yes, we know there are some injuries they're dealing with. Yes, important players are out, but the team is not talented enough to go on a magic carpet ride that gets them in the playoffs and goes on a remarkable run. It doesn't appear that way. It's not that there's a lack of effort, but it just isn't. It doesn't look like it's going to be their season. And if that's the case, and it looks like it is, then they're going to have to make some, sometimes hard decisions and trying to retool this roster on the fly.
Okay, I wanted to get back to the comment that you had addressed that Scott Arniel said when he said, like, asked about what's happened with the 3-on-3 overtime this year, and his answer was personnel. Now, I've thought, watching right off the bat, the absence of Josh Morrissey already, and I know that the results weren't there before that, but losing Josh Morrissey, I think, is a huge loss in your ability to produce points in overtime. But all that said, I'm a little confused by that answer and what he means by it. I'd like your take on it. I know that he didn't overly elaborate, but you were in the room, you were talking with him. What's your takeaway on what he is saying with that very, very short answer?
Yeah, I just think that, I mean, we've talked about it, not having Ehlers available for that 3-on-3. And again, Ehlers was usually a secondary option for the Jets. We know that, but I just don't think that they have that explosive game breaker, on the second and third and fourth rotations, I guess. But again, and I understand people have their own thoughts, and, Elias Solomonson is someone that I think is going to be incorporated to overtime, sooner than later. I didn't have a chance to ask him, but I wonder if today, Sean, the reason it's Hayden Fleury instead of Solomonson in overtime, even though he hadn't played since January 6th, Solomonson kind of crashed heavily into the boards late in the game. He looked a bit shaken up. Now, again, I understand he wasn't used the other night in Anaheim in overtime either, but he's a guy whose mobility will allow them to use him in those scenarios moving forward. But I mean, they just haven't found the magic formula of guys in extra time. And, again, I don't know, maybe, another guy that can skate is Appleton. I know he wasn't used a ton in overtime either, but with he and Lowry, in the past, I guess they had got some shifts where they had the shutdown element. So I think that's maybe what it was looking like, I guess. But again, and the other night they used Nyquist and Toews, and we know that, Nyquist has been in one all year, 40 plus games without a goal dating back to last year. And, Jonathan Toews' offense has dried up a little bit too. We wondered if he'd have that burst coming out of the break like he did at the Olympic break. But now he's closing in on, I think it's now 8 or 9 games without a point. So, they need more from their secondary layer of offense. And whether that's at 5-on-5 or in extra time, I think that's part of the frustration, even though that was directed directly to 3-on-3. I think that probably stretches into his overall thoughts on where the team is at.
I mean, it would be strange. Like I could, okay, if he's saying personnel and the idea is I don't have the personnel to succeed at 3-on-3 the way that we did in the past, that I don't know how much clearer of a finger pointing that could be at the general manager and the roster that he's put together, if that's what he means by it. If it's personnel, as in I'm just saying that the players aren't getting it done out there, I mean, that's a pretty direct indictment of your team. Regardless, the answer coming from Scott Arniel to me felt very pointed and we can sit here and it can be an ambiguous answer to us, and we not be able to put our finger specifically on who he's talking about. But my guess is within the organization, that message is being heard by whoever it's intended to be heard by, or it's ambiguous within the organization as well. And then multiple people may feel like they're having the finger pointed at them. Regardless, it's struck me as a strange answer, just because it seems to me to be like, it's not your typical coach saying, well, it's on all of us, and we need to find ways, and we need to find ways to find the right combinations of players out there, and we need to get one more save in these situations, and so on and so forth. This very much felt like a call out by the head coach. And I don't know, the one thing that's fascinating, Ken, is we know that this team was very adverse to the call out in the Paul Maurice era.
Yep.
And then we know that there was the call out era really began when Rick Bowness came, and it actually led to an accountability in the organization that had been lacking in the organization's entirety before that. And then all of a sudden it became what they were defined by, their accountability. Maybe this is a coach getting back to a scenario where he's like, I'm done with the smoke screens. I'm done providing cover. It's time for us to get out there. And the one thing that I would think that has been fairly consistent with Scott Arniel down the stretch here is when the Jets blow leads, when they, don't close out games, when they don't get that next goal they're supposed to, when they don't get the points, basically, there's no, oh, I thought we had a good game, a la right. Paul Maurice style or anything like that. This is a coach who's looking at the finish line and seeing that his vehicle is running out of the gas it's going to need to get across that finish line. And every time they miss an opportunity to capitalize, it's something that he's not afraid to call them out for. I wanted to come back just quickly on Jonathan Toews. I'm seeing exactly what you're seeing, and I thought exactly what you thought. I was interested in seeing what was going to happen with Jonathan Toews coming out of the Olympic break, because what we saw from him in that 5-day Christmas break was a guy who used it as a reset, found some energy, found some ability to kind of, let his body kind of rest up, and then launched out of Christmas time looking a lot closer to what we expected he could look like. Jonathan Toews has been invisible to me these last 3 games. There will be wide swaths of hockey where I'll be watching, and I'm talking like a period and a half, and then all of a sudden I'll see him and I'll be like, man, I almost forgot he was on this team. Which maybe it means that this low, slow style of play that the Jets are playing right now is having my eyes glaze over, and I'm not paying as much attention as I should. But I think it says a little bit something about his impact. Like, he's going out there and he's spending his time on the ice, but the impact that he was having for a while there, I don't see it being felt at all. And I wonder at this stage what it looks like for the Winnipeg Jets going forward. If this now, because remember, it was all supposed to be about building, right? And what Christmas gave us was the idea that, okay, with a little bit of rest, now he's got his feet underneath him. Now he's going, and now this is the build. And a lot of people said it in the media. This is what everyone's been waiting for. Now his game's stepping up. It didn't matter that he didn't have things going in November and December. It's going now, and it's all about the end of the season. He's as quiet as I can remember him being for the entirety of the season right now. And if this is where he is a long way from the build that everyone, including his GM and his coach, had been suggesting he was building towards, which was supposed to be a crescendo towards the end of the season.
Well, the reason I hear you. And part of the reason we feel the way that you do, Sean, he had 14 shifts, I think, for a season low 842 today. Just 1 shot on goal, 1 attempt. He did win 5 of 8 draws for 63%. But yeah, I went and double checked. It's 9 games without a point. And again, his game isn't only about points. We've known that. It's always been his deal. But he hasn't been able to have the impact coming out of the break that was expected of him. And I think he was 6 games without a point going into the break because of the partly because of the taxing nature of the schedule. So, yeah, I mean, nobody's harder on himself than Jonathan Toews. So he can't be happy with the way things are going now. But he's going to battle through and try to get himself back on track the way that he did coming out of the break. But yeah, right now it hasn't been going particularly well. Gus Nyquist is a guy who has had a really difficult season. His frustration has been evident, even though, he played his 900th game, which is an incredible milestone the other day. But I think the hope was that those two would find a way to get themselves going, but they just haven't had any real chemistry going. I didn't mind Walker Duehr. Actually, I liked what I saw from Duehr.
Hold on. Let's handle that separately. Let's close out your point on Toews.
Yeah, just he needs to do more, and I think that he knows that. And again, how he gets to that point, we'll see. But we know that historically, as the games have gotten tougher, he's played better. So, but he's also dealing with something and coming back that he's never had to deal with before. So, this isn't a matter of effort or trying harder. It's trying to find a way to make an impact and get himself going. So, yeah, I mean, it'll be an interesting week ahead. We know he's on record saying he doesn't want to be moved, but I'm curious to see what the next few days brings, maybe on that front as well.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a team looking for help in that regard, it's not helping now.
No.
The way that he's been playing. And to be honest,
no doubt.
The runway that he's shown was a little bit of a ramp up at the beginning of the season, a little bit after Christmas, but it's been wide swaths. So we talked about a guy like Cole Perfetti and how he's left wide open spaces in his game, and that's going to affect him. The wide open spaces that Jonathan Toews has left in his game, at the very least, means it's going to be hard if he decided that he wanted to move on. If there was an organization interested in picking him up, I don't know that there's going to be a huge return for Kevin Cheveldayoff based on what we're seeing here. And I'm sure that's an uncomfortable conversation to have with the player. If someone did come knocking, I guess, as a GM, you do your job and you say, hey, this team called. I know you said that you weren't interested in going anywhere, but it's my job to bring this by you regardless. It's not turning out the way that a lot of people thought it would, myself included. We've said this before, but it's just, we were thinking it's one of those things that you're right until all of a sudden you're wrong, and he takes off and he becomes everything everyone thought he would be at the end of the season. Now he's dominant and everything is working out. This is one of those ones where if you were telling me, Renny, at the beginning of the year when you thought he was going to get 50 points, which is what I said, you're dead wrong. You've been right this whole time. And if my counter was like, well, he may not get 50, but by the end of the year, he's going to be a force, right? When they need him to be. That's another one of those things. The people who would have been pushing back against me would remain right. And the idea of them being wrong is getting a little bit far off regardless. It's a game of Jonathan Toews that could use the Pristine Roofing wake-up call. And you know what that means. Time to give North End Rick the Pristine Roofing wake-up call at 204-981-6289. He's the guy. You went down at your place for all your roofing, siding, and exterior needs. You can also call Pristine Roofing directly at 204-237-7663. Give your home the Pristine Roofing and Siding wake-up call. You will be glad that you did. Ken, why don't you give Sweet Lou a shout-out?
Right on. For folks who have realty needs you'd like to have net, contact Lou Ferlin at Real LePage Dynamic Realty, 204-791-9971, or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's Lou at LOUFURLAN.ca. Lou Ferlin, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of the community, including this podcast.
Okay, I'm just going to bring this up quickly. You may want to touch on it, but Gift Guy has his pitchfork out. He's got the torch lit. He's trying to get others to do so. He says the disrespectful bungling of our anthem was infuriating. Anyone else take offense to that? Ken, did you?
I don't think it was intentional. I think, again, I'm not sure if that's the regular singer or not. I was not offended, but there seemed to be... I wasn't offended by the anthem, but what was I didn't hear the chant through the TV about something about "you suck." Was that directed at Canada directly, or was that something else that I just missed?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't know what that was.
It was a weird setup there. That was, I don't know. That was the only thing that caught my attention. Obviously, I noticed the words were wrong, but I don't think it was intentional.
I would say this for a crowd in San Jose that you touched on it, like that's been an amazing barn to watch hockey in for a long time. Things clearly got quiet when that team fell off the rails here for the last number of years, but they've got a great young team. They've got a whole bunch of good young players who burnt the Jets here tonight. An 18-year-old, a guy just drafted, burnt them, while a 19-year-old is one of the best players in the league. He got an assist earlier than that. I would think you'd have to be checked out pretty darn hard in that market to miss the idea that maybe you didn't like Canada in the Olympics, but one of the guys driving the bus for Team Canada is the guy that you love. And believe me, they love Macklin Celebrini there. My guess is there weren't going to be a lot of people hating on Canada because they know how that would affect the guy that they absolutely adore there. Macklin Celebrini is going to be a legend in that market. He is already there. What he did in the Olympics was already legendary, the highest scoring teenager in the history of the Olympics. How he played on Team Canada was outstanding. The way that he pulled things off in big moments was absolutely outstanding. I would have a hard time thinking that people in San Jose who've been a good hockey market in the past would be so dense that they would miss the effect that taking a shot at Canada would have on and not just Macklin Celebrini, but Michael Misa, who scores the game winner today, or Sam Dickinson. Like, there's a list of young, great Canadian players there who are going to be running that organization for a long time and look like they have the potential to do special things. I don't think picking a fight with those players is something that hockey market is intentionally going to do.
No, agreed. And the other part is, I mean, again, look at the history. Look at guys like Joe Thornton and Patrick Marleau, Brent Burns, like all of these guys are, yes, they still live, many of them still live in California, but they have Canadian passports. So now I will say, and again, I don't know if this was on the broadcast or not, but the roar for Connor Hellebuyck when he was the visitor starting lineup was announced was pronounced, Sean. It was loud in here. They went nuts. There was a guy sitting in front of us, in the section a little lower down. He yelled out Hellebuyck's name about 6 times during the anthem. So, I mean, so that was another, and they also cheered for him in Anaheim also, Sean. So, but again, USA chants, we expect to hear those, but it just was a weird, it was strange. But again, this wasn't Alanis Morissette changing the lyrics, or Chantal Kreviazuk changing a lyric or two during the anthem during the World Series or whatever that was. That's not what I saw. I saw someone who got a little bit of stage fright and said the wrong words, not intentionally.
Well, she changed the line from sea to shining sea, I believe it was.
Yeah.
It was right before True North, Strong and Free.
Right.
And I don't know, maybe she was trying to cheekily take away the ability for the fans to chant out the True North. Maybe
okay.
Like going in there, but honestly, she stumbled, and I think the rhyme popped into her head, and she didn't sound like someone who was brashly trying to erase or insult. It sounded like a young. And here's the other thing about this, folks. Everyone thinks that, and I remember doing it when I was a kid. You think that the person who's singing the anthem is this person who gets paid heavily to do it, and it is this person of great esteem. Like, a lot of times they're just bringing in people and giving them a shot to sing the anthem, right? They're going home. Sometimes they're students in university. Sometimes they live in mom and dad's basement. You know what I mean? Sometimes they're teachers and they do it on the side. Hey, you've got one of those in Winnipeg and have had one for a long time, right? They're not necessarily, they're just people. They're just regular people who go in to do a job, and they think they've got it, and they think they've got the Canadian anthem down, and they're probably not hockey fans. They're probably not sports fans. They're not used to going out and being at games where they're singing the anthem and they get it wrong. I'm not upset about this. And to be honest, all it means to me, Ken, is it makes me proud how in Canada, for the most part, Like if you put us in, hey, where was it? Was it Ottawa where the Anthem singer's mic went out and they sang the U.S. national anthem and sang it word for word? It just means that I'm proud to be Canadian because we pay attention, because we're checked in, because we wouldn't get caught in a scenario where we didn't know the U.S. anthem, right? There's an ignorance that happens in the States towards Canada that does not happen in reverse from Canada to the United States. So am I upset about it? No. Was it worth a laugh? I don't think I found it that funny. I probably found it more embarrassing for that person, but I'm not taking a slight. I'm not taking an offense. To Walker Duehr and him being pulled up, just your thoughts on the game, and then I've got a re-ask for you after you stick specifically to your thoughts on his play within the lineup.
Yeah, again, did he make a massive impact? No, but for a team that's been looking to be faster and harder to play against, we've been saying for a while now that Walker Duehr is a guy that makes sense to get a look at. So again, this isn't the same as Elias Solomonson coming up and you got to give him, get him to 40 games. But, the Jets don't have a ton of right shot forwards, especially on the wing in the organization. He's a pending UFA. He's 28 years old. He's had 12 goals, 26 points with the Moose this year. 14 shifts tonight for 820. He's got 1 shot on net, 2 attempts, 2 hits, 1 takeaway, 1 blocked shot. So, given that he played just over 8 minutes, he found a way to be noticeable. Yeah, there's going to be some extra life. I mean, this is a guy who was claimed off waivers by the San Jose Sharks last year. So, he knows some of these guys. He knows Celebrating. He knows Will Smith. He only got 8 games with them in the NHL. But, yeah, I mean, I liked what I saw. I'd like to see more. I think he's more suited to a fourth-line role. More of a banger and a crasher. But he's got pretty good hands in tight where he can finish. But this is an energetic guy. He only got I think 18 or 20 seconds on the penalty kill. He's a guy I think that can be a penalty killer if he becomes an NHL regular. But no, it's incumbent upon him to force his way into more work. But, I liked what I saw and I'd like to see more is as simple as I can put it. Again, I'm not saying this is the answer to changing everything, but, we know Cole Kepi is a pending UFA also, Sean. So if you're the Jets, you want to find out if Walker Duehr is someone you want to consider extending to be a fourth line.
So we've seen it online and on Twitter and things like that. And we know that if it's on Twitter, then it holds a lot of value and it holds a lot of currency. Sorry, had to take that shot. But there's a lot of people who are upset that this was an opportunity not given to some of the well-known draft picks and names, that it's handed over to a guy who's an undrafted player in the organization. And I wanted your take just on the idea that a team that I don't think has got to the point where they're waving the white flag and saying, okay, let's take a look at what we have in the organization here. I don't think they're there yet, but when you have injuries and you're forced to go there, why not go down that road? I made fun of the whole Twitter thing, but I'm not saying that the sentiment doesn't have some value to it. Like, at what point, if you're the Winnipeg Jets, are you thinking, okay, we want to see what we have with Walker Duehr here, but how much are you actually going to see versus what's the value of bringing a young guy up, getting some games underneath him, giving him an opportunity, and trying to bring one of your future up a little bit faster by giving them an opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, this is an easy one for me, Sean. And again, I still think that Brad Lambert can become an NHLer, but I mean, Walker Duehr is more experienced, yes, but he's got twice as many goals and twice as many points as Brad Lambert this year. Brad Lambert, 6 goals, 13 points in 34 games. Yes, he's had some injury trouble, but Brad Lambert hasn't made it impossible for the Jets not to call him up, Sean, and neither has Chibrikov. Chibrikov, 3 goals, 7 points, 12 penalty minutes, -14. Brad Lambert, -10. And again, I'm not here saying plus minus is the be all and end all, but when you're in double digits, you've been on for too many even strength goals against. And, from scouts and people around the game of hockey that I talk to, they're watching those guys way more than I am. And they're also not saying, hey, the Jets are missing out by not calling these guys up. I think they still might get an opportunity. But those guys, Sean, and again, I say this as someone who covered the American League for a decade. I've seen plenty of guys who thought they got looked over or got screwed. Someone else is getting the call up. you gotta earn it. Walker Duehr earned the opportunity, and those other guys need to be better. I mean, we talked going into the year, Sean, the Jets made some high-priced signings to get more talent in the minors to help insulate those young players and some of the other young players that are turning pro for the first time, like Colby Barlow, like Jacob Julian, like Braden Yager. Those guys aren't ready to be NHLers right now, and that's the honest truth. I think that those guys still have great opportunity to become them, but they need to be better. And if they were better, they would be getting the opportunity. But Walker Duehr is someone that has earned this chance, and we'll see how long the runway is, Sean. But again, depending on what happens in the next week, I would advocate for Walker Duehr getting a regular shift on the fourth line moving forward. And again, this is a different conversation, but I would also advocate for Morgan Barron moving up in the lineup. That's a separate conversation, but I want to see more of Walker Duehr, don't you?
I'm honestly split on this, and I'm split because I don't think that a reputation, trying to battle a reputation should be the focus of an organization. That reputation I'm talking about is the one that Rutger McGroarty's agent tried to exploit when he was in town and was very successful at doing. Like at that time, Rutger McGroarty. Now, everything that's happened with Rutger McGroarty since is a player who's left here because he didn't want to get stuck down in the minors, because that's what the Winnipeg Jets do. And, I want to go somewhere where I have a chance, and he gets sent to Pittsburgh and spends a whole bunch of time trying to prove his way in Pittsburgh, and it did not happen early for him, and he spent some time up and down and has had to kind of prove his case there. Everything that would have been expected from him from the Winnipeg Jets, right? So that was, but when his agent kind of floated that, there was a massive chunk of the fan base that was ready to swallow that hook, line, and sinker and be like, now we're losing guys. Oh, Rutger McGroarty just loves Winnipeg and so wants to come to Winnipeg and spend his life in Winnipeg. And the only thing keeping him from being here is that they don't let the young guys play in Winnipeg. That was always horse crap right from the very beginning. People got played in there. But that said, there is a feeling in the organization, and I would say that there's been a lot of I've been one in the past who's been critical of the Winnipeg Jets, where I've said they've left the grapes to die on the vine far too often. And so it is to a degree an earned reputation. And I would say this, Ken, I agree with you 100%. All the players that you talked about, the Chibrakovs and the Lamberts, they haven't gone down and done the things you would expect from those guys to say, oh, you're going to send me down and I'm not happy about it. I'm going to make it impossible for you to keep me down here. They haven't done that. No doubt about it, right? The other players, the Colby Barlows, they're clearly not ready. Colby Barlow's struggling to get a foothold in the AHL. Never mind trying to bring him up to the NHL. And Yager and guys like that. But all that said, I don't know that I wouldn't like the idea of grabbing a Chibukov or grabbing
Zhilkin.
Sure. I don't even know Zhilkin. Like Brad Lambert again and saying, okay, you said you wanted it. Here you go. Here's this jolt. We're going to give you something that we don't even necessarily think that you've earned, but you've had a pout on, and it's not that we're rewarding a pout, but maybe we're missing something here and you have a reason to be upset. Maybe, just maybe. We don't think so. And we think the right way to handle this is to go out and prove it. But maybe, just maybe, we're going to give you an opportunity and you're going to go shoot the lights out. And then you'll give us what we've been looking for, which is that excuse to not send you down. And I think at some point, like, you go and you get Walker. What's the long-term vision for Walker Duehr within the Jets organization?
Yeah, he's a depth forward. At best, he's going to be a fourth-line player, even though he played in the third-line role today.
So that play of being like, let's see what we've got in our depth fourth-line forward, and maybe we'll see what's happening with next year. I don't know. I do think that there's a frustration clearly out there. I think that frustration has been warranted in the past. I think it was maybe warranted on this one. I don't know the personal details of what's going on down there with the players that I've mentioned here and the Brad Lamberts. Maybe there's a real when
he's also been sick too, Sean. He's also been sick the last while and missed a bunch of time. So I don't know.
But when you're in the dressing room, things can be different, and maybe there's been reason and to not give him that opportunity, to not say, okay, prove us wrong, kind of thing. I don't know what's going on there. All I know is I just think that, bring up Walker Duehr and saying, we liked what we saw from this depth forward, who at best is going to be a depth forward that we keep around for a while. Maybe we see a little bit more from him. I understand what Walker Duehr is, what he's going to be at some stage. If you're going to solve the problems that the Winnipeg Jets have, Walker Duehr is not the solution. And I'm not saying that Brad Lambert's going to come up and he's going to be honest with you, I think that if you brought Brad Lambert up and put him in the position where I just suggested, I think we'd see more of the same from Brad Lambert. And there's maybe even a little bit of a danger in harming his confidence. But at some point, I think with players that were going to be special, you have to treat them special. I had a great conversation, I wish I could relay it, with a coach one time who was telling me about like star players on his team, and he said this player did this, and what did I do? And I said, well, you treated him like anyone else. And he said, no, and they're not like anyone else, and you have to treat them different. And I remember that so went against everything I thought of what coaching is supposed to be with players like that. But the explanation that was given to me, I walked away from it. I was like, I've never thought of it and that makes so much sense. And let's be honest with ourselves. Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor have not been and never have been in the Jets organization coached or treated like other players. Maybe sometimes the guys who you think are going to be special NHLers have to have differing circumstances and be given different opportunities. And I say that knowing that and saying out loud, I would not be happy at all if I were the Winnipeg Jets with what I've seen from the players that we've been talking about and their ability to try and capitalize on the opportunities given to them. I'd be extremely upset with what I'm seeing from them, but maybe, just maybe, you're able to light a spark or something like that with these players with this opportunity. Whereas I think with Walker Duehr, you have a good understanding of what you're going to get and what the cap of that is going to be.
Right. You know the ceiling, but you also know that one guy has 92 NHL games played and the other has 10 games played, Sean. So I'm not surprised they chose experience as long as they're still trying to be in the race. I mean, that's natural to me.
But I mean, what's the problem?
It's predictable.
Right, what's the problem? Like, I guess it fits. I started the show by saying Scott Arniel is trying to win every game 1-0 right now. Walker Duehr probably helps you more with that than does, any of the players that I mentioned, Brad Lambert, guys like that, Chibrikov. But all that said, maybe he allows you to win a game 2-1 or something like that. Maybe you get some offense from some place where you just cannot find it. At some point, if the Winnipeg Jets are going to get to be a better team and get out of the rut of being a let's win this game 1-0 team, this year, next year, they're going to have to start to find some offense, and I just don't think you're finding that with Walker Duehr. Ken, well, I mean, since we're talking about scoring, let's just say as hard it has been for the Jets to find scoring, it won't be hard for you to score a great rate with Cambrian Credit Union. Getting a mortgage doesn't have to throw you off your game while you focus on home sweet home. Our friends at Team Cambrian Credit Union take care of the mortgage part with their low rate. Whether you're looking for a new home, renewing, or making the switch, Cambrian is your mortgage MVP. They can help make the next season of your mortgage path easier and help save you money. Now that is what we call a win. Head to cambrian.mb.ca/rates for more. Okay, I just want to say something.
Let's see if this works here. Let's can I highlight this or no?
Go for it. Yeah.
Okay. Can you highlight? Okay, I got my comments are way behind here. Sorry.
Well, you wanted to throw it in there. Yeah,
Did it come up or no?
I don't think it'll you grab it. You let me know when you have it. Before that, I wanted to do this. Couple things. I just wanted to bring this up. Paul Roberts says, after the mixed reaction to Matthews in Toronto last night, guesses on Hellebuyck's welcome next game. Would love an extended cheer for KFC and a polite golf claps for the goalie. No booze, but no chance. My guess, and I've thought this since the beginning, there's been some people who have been vocal on Twitter. What I've seen time and time again last year when Hellebuyck was struggling in the playoffs and there was a whole bunch of noise on Twitter about how poorly he was playing. When he got here, he had MVP chants raining down on him every single game. It is a supportive building. I fully expect it to be supporting going forward. Mike Harwin is going to dovetail us into the quick little trade conversation we're going to have here at the start of the week. As he says, not one word about Chevy's leash thus far. Give us what the people want. I'll give you a word about the leash, Mike. You may have heard this before. Okay, you know those dog leashes? I've got one. I just took the dogs for a walk a couple hours ago, and you can just it's a retractable leash, right? They can just run and run and run, and then they can come back and run and run and run. Every once in a while, they'll run and they'll hit the end of that leash and they'll yank, and then they'll come back and then they'll go do it again, run and run and run and hit the end of that leash. So Chevy's leash is one of those, except no one has ever seen it hit the end. It just goes forever, okay? And that's what you can expect going forward. The idea that there is a leash on Kevin Cheveldayoff right now and it is getting tugged in any way is absolutely ridiculous. We've told you this before. We'll tell it to you again. The owner of this team wants Kevin Cheveldayoff to be his GM for life. He wants him in that job until he either can't do the job anymore or doesn't want to do the job anymore. This is what Mark Chipman wants. He said this in the past. He doesn't believe in expiry dates. He said this in the past, that when they're up or whether they're down, when they do get down, Kevin Cheveldayoff has shown Mark Chipman in the past that when they are down, he knows how to build things back up. And there's no one that he would trust more to get the Jets out of the where they are right now than Kevin Cheveldayoff himself. So you can say what you want and you can suggest that we are avoiding the conversation. I'm just avoiding having to repeat what I think is obvious and what I think has been made obvious in this organization and in this market. There is no leash on Kevin Cheveldayoff. His job is safe. He may have the safest seat for a GM in the entirety of the NHL right now, and that's saying something given where this team is and what their expectations were at the beginning of the year. That said, let's get into it and talk about what he's got going on this upcoming week. What do you expect from Kevin Cheveldayoff this weekend?
Yeah, I think it's sort of been a quiet time around the league. I think that, most teams were, including the Jets, were going to see how the weekend goes, see if they could cut into some of those double-digit deficits. Maybe you could get on a little bit of a mini run and make things interesting. I expect, what we know is that deadlines spur action, Sean. That's the reality. Everyone says you always want to get the preemptive strike, but historically, most of the deadline deals are made on deadline day. Yes, sometimes they're the day before and sometimes they're a month before. But when there are so many teams kind of in it, I think, we know that our friend and colleague Elliot Friedman has said that, it looks like a buyer's market. And that may be the case. But the buyers would also be people that are trying to drive down the price at this time of year also. If you're trying to get better, you're going to try to get better. Now, you're hoping that the other team either lowers the price of acquisition or blinks and, makes a move for the sake of trying to get something for him. So, anyways, it's I expect the Jets to be active. Quickly, Sean, 2 players ended up on waivers today that caught my attention. I wonder if they're catching Kevin Cheveldayoff's attention. And they're both Oilers. Alec Regula, 6'4", 211-pound right shot defenseman, big, strong guy, fairly mobile. We expect, or I would expect Luke Shen is a guy that could be on the move this week as a pending unrestricted free agent. Alec Regula would be a guy that could battle for his 6'7" job on the right-hand side. The Jets don't have a ton of depth on that side either. He has appeal, I would think, to a lot of teams around the league. Andrew Mangiapane, yes, we know the Jets have been interested previously. Maybe that interest cooled. But, Sean, with Vladislav Namestnikov and Niederreiter going down, I wonder if Mangiapane becomes more appealing as someone that has 1-year term at $3.6 million. Again, not a change the roster solution, but someone who could be an upgrade with some term on the contract. Even though he's had a tough year, just 7 goals and 14 points with the Oilers this year. Do you think either one of those are guys that could be claimed by a team like the Jets?
Oh, I think I think that Mangiapane would be something that the Jets would be all over. They're trying to find more scoring. We've been talking about this, and someone touched on it here when they talked about rebuilding and kind of guffawed and said the Jets have no trade capital. And they're right about that. And, it's funny because one of the things that was said in response to my saying the reality of the situation is Kevin Cheveldayoff is not going anywhere, they said that doesn't mean the media can't talk about it. We'll talk about it. We're almost at the 20-game mark where I said that I was going to share the big overarching idea, I think, of what the Jets should be looking to do to get themselves out of the jam that they find themselves in. The jam they find themselves in is they're a team that can't score. They're a team that's forced to play this paint dry style of hockey to try and win games, which is going to be a tough sell to the people who want to go watch entertaining hockey. They don't have the draft capital. They don't have the prospects coming up to make the trades, but they've got an aging core that needs to win right now. They're in a really, really tough pickle. And I'm not saying that Kevin Cheveldayoff's actions haven't got them in that tough pickle. In fact, I'm one of the people I think who first said in this market that I think that the changes made by the GM at the beginning of the year put this team in a situation where it could not try and be the team it was trying to be, and thus has struggled the way that it has struggled. Regardless, it still doesn't change the fact that, like, I'm not going to sit here and spend 20 minutes every show talking to Ken about whether or not the Jets should keep or not keep Kevin Cheveldayoff, because it's a moot point. And that would be ridiculous. It would be a ridiculous waste of time, a fabulous waste of time, if you would, to constantly sit and talk about that. We've laid that out. And again, at the 20-game mark, I'm going to lay out my grand opus of what I think the Winnipeg Jets should do going forward, should things kind of continue here. But in the meantime, the Jets need to find those deals that create something out of nothing, right? They got Vlad Nemestikov for, what was it, a fourth-round pick? A fourth-round pick at some point, and turned him into a player that they've used on their second line for quite a while. This is the kind of things that the Winnipeg Jets need to do. They went out and they found Fleury in the offseason, a guy who'd been a little bit of a cast-off. They went at one time and they found, this is going way back, but they found Brandon Tanev and brought him into the organization. Like, these are the kind of moves it's going to take from Kevin Cheveldayoff to find a faster path out of this, and go find a guy like Andrew Mangiapane, and maybe, just maybe, he comes in and regains a little bit of what he did that made him the player that he was when he was in Calgary at some point, right? And if you do that, maybe you get your above replacement and you get 10 more points a year or something like that. Do I think he's going to be a home run and he's going to be one of the Jets' best players? No, but the Jets need to find something for nothing. So it only makes sense for me that they go out and they try things like that. Mangiapane makes more sense to me than does Regula, because I think if I'm being honest, I think the Jets have had conversations and just didn't want to spend any kind of price to go get that player. But here's an opportunity to welcome him in, have a little bit of term, which the Jets love, because it means they don't need to go out and find a player to fill that role this summer with players that I think they may move on from at the trade deadline, if that's possible with their injuries, the Nemestikovs, the Niederreiters, the Logan Stanleys, the Schens. I think that the Jets should be trying to get whatever they can get back to try and build up that draft capital. Fill the cupboards with whatever you can kind of fill the cupboards with. But all that said, I also know that it puts them in a tentative situation where they go into next season with a roster that is not fully filled out with NHL players. And it's hard in Winnipeg to go find 2, 3, 4, 5 NHL players out of the blue. So Mangiapane is something that they could grab if he gets that deep to the Winnipeg Jets, or maybe he won't get claimed at all. I don't know, but I do think that he's a guy they could take a run at.
Yeah, right on. And then in terms of the trades, I mean, this is not breaking news. I mean, if the Jets aren't able to get an extension, Logan Stanley has to be moved. I mean, he's one of their best assets right now, and I expect he'll be moved. I don't know what the price of acquisition is. I think he's someone that, they would like to add some. We know they don't have a second in the next 2 drafts. They don't have a fourth either. I personally, right now, I don't see Logan Stanley for a first being something the Jets are able to get. If they've had an offer for a first, they would have taken it, I think. But the other thing for the Jets is that I also think that some of their sight lines would be on a more NHL-ready prospect that can jump into your lineup. And Sean, further to your point about having to improve that middle six, you got to find someone who's, ready to kick down the door at the American League, or is a extra player for somebody else that's a young player and has, controllable years. That's also something the Jets are going to be trying to add here in the next week.
All right. Well, I think we covered that all around, up, down, all around, just like Myers Drugs has the city covered off. If you have any pharmaceutical needs, any health food needs, any supplemental needs, Myers will bring it right to your door. That's right. They deliver anywhere in the city of Winnipeg. So give them a call if you're looking for any of those things. Trusted name, trusted brand in the city of Winnipeg for a long time, and you will see why. Ken, Johnson Group got you covered. Play of the game. What do you got?
Well, I think the world record holder in this category is, unless I'm wrong, Sean, you saw the replay. I didn't actually get a replay of it, but I'm pretty sure Dylan DeMello saved another goal today. Did he not? Did he not kick across in the first period, and did he not block a shot in the chest there? If not, I'll go Elias Solomonson. Definitely made a save in the third period. Again, I don't know for sure that it was going in, but between those two plays, I think the Jets defenseman had Connor Hellebuyck covered on a night where Connor Hellebuyck got the save percentage up back into the range that we've been used to seeing. He was .939 today, 33 of 35 shots stopped in this one against the Sharks. But he also was aided by, at least one save by a defenseman and maybe a second.
Yes, very, very well done. He definitely is, and we'll be asking us tomorrow, Ken, what does he win? He said, I did it again. I get the Johnson Group covered award. What do I win? I keep waiting for the check in the mail or whatever. But you run a small business in Canada, look to Canada's #1 employee benefits plan, Chambers Plan, to give you a competitive edge. Chambers Plan is the simple, stable, smart choice for over 30,000 businesses countrywide. Visit chamberplan.ca to learn more. And that brings us to our hashtag the keg save of the game. I'll jump in first on this one, Ken.
Sure.
It's the save where it's a rebound and Connor Hellebuyck dives across to get the save. He actually had a lot of nice saves tonight. That was an earned save percentage on this night. Just can't seem to get the wins. His win-loss record since returning is astounding. It is astounding that he took that little break, went on to because I was going and I was looking before the break and all the kind of wins that the Jets had. And it's like every time they put Comrie in that, how many straight games has Comrie won now? Or what's his record in his last 5 games? I think he's like 4. I think he's won 5 of his last 6 or something like that. Regardless, regardless, I thought that was a great save. He gave the Winnipeg Jets a chance to win that game. Doesn't turn out, but a good game by Connor Hellebuyck. Did you have a keg save of the game, Ken?
I also liked his breakaway save on Kurashev in the third, early in the third. Now they scored, a couple shifts later, but that wasn't on him. That was a poorly played defensive effort. But yeah, I thought that was a good one. And also, honorable mention to Nedeljkovic. That save on Morgan Barron. Great explosive play by Barron to get there.
Right.
Shorthanded chance, just stuck the leg out. So again, an honorable mention, but Hellebuyck was definitely deserving in this one of the keg save of the game.
Right. That's Ken's and my hashtag the keg save of the game. Doesn't matter what we think, though. Matters what you think. Share with us your hashtag the keg save of the game. You're automatically entered to win a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg. Each location finer than the last. And the winner from our last show, that would be Donnie Boy 54. Donnie Boy, you know what to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name. Send me an email. All of the fine folks at the keg send you a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg. Each location finer than the last. Ken, we didn't really flesh it out. I had to say this. My theory for a long time has been that the Jets keep giving up these leads because they're trying to play this shutdown brand of hockey, and they just, they're not the fastest team. They just eventually kind of get overwhelmed as the game goes on. But you touched on it right there at the end. You touched on it earlier in the show, and Scott Arneal touched on it. It was just defensive lapse after defensive lapse for about 2 minutes there in the third period, and it finally cost them. I don't know what happened there. That seemed really strange. I don't think I left us time to dive into it, but this is one of those ones where I don't know, maybe it's mental errors. Maybe you get like that because you start making mental errors, but they shut down the defensive kind of errors after that. But boy, oh boy, like you'd said, the breakaway and then the 2-on-1, all those plays, it was way too easy for the San Jose Sharks to tie up that game, and that's why the Winnipeg Jets end up losing this game in overtime. Regardless, they are done with their road trip, as is our main man, Kenny, going to be getting back here to the city of Winnipeg. A Kenny and Renny reunion. We haven't seen each other in almost a month here. I guess it has been a month. It's definitely been a month because I left on February 1st, and it's March now. So it's going to be good to see you, Ken.
Sorry, I have bad news. I'm only going to see you on Thursday. Sorry.
Oh, well, whatever.
Wednesday, maybe Wednesday, but I won't see you on Tuesday.
Yes. I can take it. We
Thanks for your patience.
Good things take time. So anyways, good things take time. Hopefully you guys had a good time while you were here. And if you did enjoy the conversations happening in this place, I would suggest that you honor and go visit our sponsors who fight to keep the conversation going in this space. For us, that's Jim Pattison Toyota on Region, Vittorio Rossi, Cambrian Credit Union, Pristine Roofing, Sweet Lou Ferlin, Flame and Comfort, Myers Drugs, the Johnston Group, and of course the fine folks at the Keg. Thank you to them. Thank you to all of you. Let's reconvene and do this again after the next one. Talk to you then. Bye-bye.